Mr. Henry's life was a fortress of glass and steel. He lived in luxurious isolation, surrounded by untouchable meeting rooms and seven-figure contracts he could never truly feel. His entire existence was a perfect, yet frigid, Excel spreadsheet, where every value was quantifiable, except his own soul. But one day, stepping onto the rice fields of Bắc Ninh, an undeniable yearning to feel the pulse of a different life compelled him. He bent down to the mud, not as a tourist seeking an experience, but as a man seeking a cure for a dry, barren spirit. He didn't know it then, but the moment he took off his Swiss watch and plunged his bare hands into the earth, he would discover a truth about humility, joy, and the human spirit far deeper than any luxury he had ever owned. Henry was accustomed to managing abstract risks. His entire life had been spent building a sterile wall between himself and the organic chaos of the real world. But after hearing stories of the unconditional connection found on the sidewalks of Saigon, he realized his material wealth had left him spiritually impoverished. He decided he had to seek his own lesson in the one place where life is born, the rice field. He arrived at a small village on the outskirts of Bắc Ninh just as dawn was breaking. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and ripe rice, a raw, honest aroma, worlds away from the expensive colognes or the smell of new printer paper in his office. This scent hid nothing. It was the essence of life itself. He watched the farmers. There was no rush, only intentionality. They bowed to the field, their sickles flashing rhythmically under the morning sun, harvesting the tall golden rice stalks. Henry's first feeling wasn't panic, but a sense of rejection. His stiff, clumsy body, he thought, wasn't designed for this kind of elegance. He pulled his broad straw hat lower, symbolically removing his Swiss watch, a gesture akin to shedding the shackles of time, and muttered to himself, "I came here to work, not to observe." Then he stepped into the field. His foot sank deep into the soft, yielding mud. His movements were awkward, rigid like a wrongly programmed robot. A young farmer named Min, with gentle eyes and calloused hands, approached him. Min didn't laugh. He just offered a look of profound understanding and compassion. Gently, Min grasped Henry's wrist, not to correct him, but to transmit a feeling. "Slow down, An," he seemed to say without words. "Don't use force. Use the rhythm of the earth." Henry looked at Min's hands. They weren't tools for manipulating a keyboard. They were conduits between man and nature. A deep wave of humility washed over Henry. He remembered firing someone for a lack of efficiency on a spreadsheet. Now here he was, unable to execute the most basic movement of human sustenance. He became acutely aware of every drop of sweat, the aches radiating up his back. But this time, Henry didn't flee the pain. He accepted it as a confession from his body for decades of neglect. As the sun climbed higher, Henry began to notice the rhythm of the sickles, the rhythm of voices and laughter. Everyone worked in synchronized waves, a collective dance. Their conversations were joyful, free from anxiety or the stress of KPIs. They worked for each other, supporting one another naturally. He had a flashback to his executive meetings. People spoke with courtesy, but underneath lay a subtle competition. Every compliment was strategic, and no one ever dared admit weakness. That was artificial cooperation, driven by the pressure of money. Here, when someone stumbled, others laughed, but immediately reached out to help without judgment. Henry realized that in his company, success and failure were individual. Here they were collective. The laughter in this field wasn't contingent upon a result, like profit. The laughter created the result, cohesion. By midday, Henry was exhausted. He stopped, leaning on his sickle. The burning ache in his back and hands was unmistakable. A sudden feeling of loneliness descended, but it wasn't the isolating loneliness of New York. It was the loneliness of transition. He was among them, but not yet one of them. Min approached wordlessly. He simply offered Henry a cup of cool green tea and his own small towel, then resumed cutting rice. Min's silence was a gift, an unspoken acceptance of Henry's frailty. In that brief respite, Henry reflected on waste. He had wasted money and time, but the worst waste was gratitude. He had taken food, health, and the labor of others completely for granted. He saw an elderly woman, her hands trembling, yet diligently harvesting. Her perseverance wasn't stubbornness, it was a sacred acceptance of nature's cycle. Henry felt closer to her than to any colleague he'd ever signed $1 million contract with. He had to change his approach. He stopped trying to be efficient and started trying to feel the rhythm. He began to laugh at himself, at his own awkward mistakes. But this laughter wasn't forced to mask embarrassment. It was the laughter of self-acceptance. He saw a small boy drop a bundle of rice, and without thinking, Henry immediately knelt, using his bare hands to carefully gather every single grain. He felt a strange, unspoken connection to the earth and to the people. Gathering those tiny grains brought him more satisfaction than closing $1 billion deal. This achievement was something he could touch, something he could see, not just an abstract number on a screen. He realized that labor here was a form of communication, through sweat, through unspoken help, through the rhythm of their bodies. As the sun set, Henry was exhausted, but light-hearted. The farmers clapped him on the back, offering sincere, friendly smiles. They embraced him as a brother after a shared day of struggle. He was invited to the traditional ryokan festival, where they drink wine from a communal jar through long bamboo tubes. The air was filled with laughter, music, and the warmth of community. This wasn't a corporate party. This was an invitation into life itself. Henry lifted a bamboo tube to his lips. The wine was rich and alive, tasting of labor and gratitude. Wine here was a means of sharing, not showing off. He looked around. The villagers were not wealthy in material terms, but they were overflowing with joy and spirit. Henry realized that true wealth is measured by the frequency of genuine laughter, not the balance of a bank account. The next morning, as Henry prepared to leave, Min walked him to the main road. Min spoke, his words translated, "You did very well, Anne, the harvest will be plentiful." Henry, in turn, offered Min a thick envelope containing a large sum of money. "Thank you," he said. "Please use this to help the others." Min looked at the envelope, then into Henry's eyes, and gently refused it. "No need, Anne Henry, if you want to help, remember this feeling. When you go home, eat slowly, and remember that every grain of this rice has our sweat in it. That is the greatest help." Min's words were a final shock to Henry's commercial logic. He wasn't asking for money. He was demanding Henry's inner change. Henry understood. He didn't need to be a donor. He needed to be a witness, a messenger. He nodded, putting the envelope away. Then he gently placed his tens of thousands dollar Swiss watch into Min's hand. "This was mine," Henry said, "but the time now belongs to you. Use it to live slowly." Min was surprised. Then his face broke into a radiant smile. Henry left, his body aching but his heart soaring. He had walked into the village a CEO, but he departed as a witness to the resilient life, joy, and authenticity of the people connected to this land. Back in his life, Henry remained an executive, but he was profoundly changed. He sold his collection of expensive watches. The broad straw hat from the rice field became the only decoration on his desk. Whenever stress mounted, he didn't reach for a strong drink. He simply looked at the hat. He had learned that true wealth isn't the ability to accumulate money, but the ability to enjoy the simplest pleasures and connect unconditionally with people. He had undergone a baptism by mud and then a baptism by communal wine. He had found life in the fields, where the humility of labor had healed the arrogance of success. If Henry's journey from cold performance to heartfelt compassion resonates with you, please share this story with those whose lives might be measured only by numbers. Don't miss the next chapter in our Slow Drip series, where Henry faces his biggest challenge yet, bringing the spirit of the rice field back to the boardroom. Like, share, and follow to join our community and receive notifications for our upcoming stories. Thank you for watching.